the conclusions from your thesis. Like, what if you give us a kind of elevator, like a synopsis of what you learned in the research you did?
Fail for you. Using psychedelics is a constitutional right, and the government has taken that away from us. And
what's that mean?
We're guaranteed to the pursuit of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, right? At least that's my understanding of some of our founding documents. Unless it like hurts other people, right? Unless it infringes on other people's rights.
That's where your thesis went?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Tell me more.
So it started with me. I wrote this thesis about like every psychedelic and the cultural context, and then like the research, and then like, or like ancient use, modern use, and then the current research. So it was like a 3-tiered process. Like the first section was like, okay, this culture used this psychedelic in this context. This culture used this other psychedelic in this context. And it was kind of like the history of psychedelics in some ways, and just giving like a, like a short little dive into each culture and how they used it, and how we know that through the archaeological record. And then they went into how modern culture has been shaped by psychedelics and the psychedelic renaissance we're going through now, but all the way back into like the 50s, 60s, and 70s, and how policy shaped psychedelic use. Mm-hmm. And then I went into like the modern research, and then I presented it to one of my 2 thesis professors, and they're like, yeah, but you're not making a point. What are you arguing? And I'm like, I'm not. I'm just writing something really cool, really fun, something I would want to read. They're like, yeah, but like you need to make a statement. That's what a thesis is. And I'm like, you're right. I'm not arguing for anything. And so I basically had to rewrite the whole thing in a way that positioned psychedelics as something that should not be illegal. So I actually can't even recall the title of it right now, but it's basically like, I looked at the legality of psychedelics and why they got there, and then made a case for why I think they shouldn't be illegal. And not that I even need to make a case, because like, I think it's a fundamental right of ours, but like, they're obviously not going to give us our freedoms back unless we can make a good case for it. And so I think the case I was making was like, there is so much benefit to having psychedelics and all drugs legal and having them be regulated. And I think that if they actually cared about people's safety, that they would regulate it and create protocols for using them and access programs so people can get them clean, so that they're not having a bad experience. And to like circle back on one of those questions earlier, like before set and setting or anything, like you have to make sure that you're actually getting the drug that you want to get. Yeah. And it's tested, and it doesn't have fentanyl in it, and it doesn't have anything you don't want, any kind of adulterants in it. And so I think that if their government is going to step in and stop us from using them, or if they're going to give us our permission to use them back, then they're going to want to hear, well, why should we do that? And I think that it's safer for everybody involved if we have clean drugs. You don't have to risk overdosing. And then it gives people the opportunity to have access to therapy and stuff like that. And ultimately, I mean, we could go into a whole debate about whether or not all drugs should be legal or not, but that's where my research led me. But I still, like, I want them to be legal, and I wouldn't recommend everyone using them. Yeah. You know, I don't think caffeine's for everybody. I don't think alcohol's for everybody.
That's right.
You know, and I don't think psychedelics are for everybody. So while I will advocate for them to be accessible by everybody, I wouldn't recommend people all use them, but I believe in people's personal freedom to choose and like take risks with their life and their body. And as long as they're not really hurting other people, then I think we have the right, like our birthright is to be able to explore our mind with plants that are out there in the world.
And it sounds like historically, a lot of different cultures have had some sort of psychedelic component as part of their rituals, or as part of their society.
Almost every single culture had some kind of medicine man or woman or person that would use these either to heal people or for divination, or just to like figure out what's going on, or to like talk to their ancestors and stuff like that. And so that's where it starts to get into like, there's like almost 2 different ways to use it, or many different ways to use it, but there's like the more clinical way to use it that Western society is adopting. And I think that's because of this like top down approach where we're like limiting people's use on them. So if we are going to use them, it has to be governed. And then there's other way where people are using them in a more maybe traditional or neo-shamanic sense, or even shamanic sense, where it's more of like a spiritual sacrament.
Yeah.
Which I think is very appropriate too in the right context and necessary.
Yeah, I think we both probably know a handful of people that went down to Peru to do ayahuasca ceremonies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And even here in Austin, we've got the Santo Daime Church that uses ayahuasca as a sacrament.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I believe that they've been granted permission by the federal government to use it as a sacrament, because it gets all the way up to like a circuit court. Before it goes to the Supreme Court, like they can approve it for the use of like a single person, and they'll look at that case. But if they get denied their use, then it appeals and keeps on going up. And if it were to go to the Supreme Court and then they decide, then it changes the precedent for the whole United States. But I don't think there's been a case that has made it all the way to the Supreme Court. And I think that's intentional. Like they grant them the access before they get to the Supreme Court so that they can give that one group permission without giving everybody permission to use it as a spiritual sacrament.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's like one way I think they're suppressing the use of it. But yeah, there's a lot of places that basically use psychedelics under, I wouldn't say the guise, but under the use of religious freedom. And I think that over time we're going to see, we're going to see everyone be able to use it in that way. But yeah, I think it's really good that people have found a way to get access to it in a way that's not illegal, because that's a huge concern for most people.
Yeah. I think the impacts of interacting with the criminal justice system and punishment and the prison system, I think, is far worse than the impacts of the drug themselves.
Yeah. And like for so many cultures, these sacraments are just that. They're sacred. And to have something that's sacred have all this baggage of like the opposite, the profane, being taken to jail, and like having your freedoms taken away. It's like, if that context is also there, it's hard to like, at least it's hard for me to like really relax into the sacredness of the medicine when there's all this top-down control gearing you into not using them.